Hello, students, and I welcome you all in our today's lecture on bioinorganic chemistry. We are starting this topic from today, and we will cover different aspects of bioinorganic chemistry in four different lectures. So, let us start with the topic: what is bioinorganic chemistry? So, bioinorganic chemistry is a very vast field, and it can be considered as interdisciplinary in nature. So if you look at the diagram here, bioinorganic chemistry can be considered as a discipline at the interface between the inorganic chemistry and biology. So both these subjects, they are involved, their concepts are involved when we are studying a bioinorganic chemistry. Now it can have different aspects, and it may be including not only the inorganic chemistry and the biology, but also it includes the concepts of biochemistry, microbiology, physics, toxicology, pharmacology, and physiology. So bioinorganic chemistry is actually a very vast subject, and it includes both the concepts of chemistry, physics, and biology. And therefore, with the help of this discipline, with the help of this subject, we can understand the detailed mechanisms of biological systems in living organisms, and its vast applications have been seen in the case of pharmaceuticals, drug development, and also to understand the biological mechanisms at molecular level, to understand the biological reactions and properties of enzymes. So, most of the enzymes, they are actually what they are bioinorganic in nature. They includes the metal ion as well as some protein. So during the study of bioinorganic chemistry, we will discuss all these aspects. Now, let us focus on history and background of this discipline. So, in the previous few decades, there has been a lot of progress of inorganic chemistry of biological systems, and the description of a rapidly developing field of chemistry as the bioinorganic seems to involve a contradiction in the terms. But however, simply it reflects a misconception going back to the beginning of modern science. So, in the early 19th century, chemistry was still divided into organic chemistry, which was including only the substance isolated from organisms, and inorganic chemistry of the dead matter. So, all the compounds, all the substances which are derived from some living organism, or they are, if they are present in the biological system, they were only considered to be the part of organic chemistry. Then suddenly this distinction became meaningless after Wohler's synthesis of organic urea from inorganic ammonium cyanide in the 1828. So this discovery of Wohler uh, proved to be a significant milestone in the development of bioinorganic chemistry. Nowadays, the organic chemistry is defined as the chemistry of the hydrocarbons and their derivatives, with the possible inclusion of certain non-metallic heteroatoms such as nitrogen, oxygen, sulfur, regardless of the origin of the metal. So basically, in the organic chemistry, we are not concerned about the biological system. Rather, we are talking about the hydrocarbon and their derivatives, and sometimes some functional groups which include these heteroatoms. So organic chemistry is not actually the biological chemistry. New and more sophisticated trace analytical methods, they have been demonstrated the importance of large number of inorganic elements in the biochemical processes. And so many enzymes, they are found to be they are found to have metal ions included in them, and after the biomass study of different plants, it has been seen that there has been some macronutrient and micronutrient which are required for their growth. So that actually revealed the the inorganic chemistry present in the biological system. So we can have a list here where these inorganic elements they are involved in the biological system. So the first and the very important are the metalloenzymes. So many enzymes which are playing a vital role in the metabolism of a biological system. They generally contain metal atom at their center, and about 40% of the known enzymes, especially the oxidoreductases, and the hydrolases, they generally contain inorganic metal ion at their center. So this list starts from the iron, copper, manganese, molybdenum, nickel, vanadium, and it goes to the zinc, magnesium, calcium. So these metalloenzymes they actually include metal ions at their core center. Then we also have non-enzymatic metalloproteins. So they are not serving the function of enzyme. They may be having some different functions, but yes, they include the metal ion surrounded by protein structure. So the very common example is hemoglobin, in which the heme, that is iron, surrounded by the globin protein, and it serves to carry the oxygen in the human body. Then we also have coenzymes, and these coenzymes are basically they are involved with other enzymes to impart them a particular function, and also the vitamins like vitamin B12. It contains cobalt ion. Then the nucleic acid, and the nucleic acids we have sodium and potassium involved. Then hormones, like in the hormones thyroxine, triiodothyronine, we have iodine present in them. Then antibiotics, so generally they have the ionophores in which valinomycin or potassium can be present, and biominerals are also known, and they are also very important applications of inorganic chemistry, like the bones, teeth, shells, corals, pearls. They are made up of calcium and silicon and the inorganic elements like them. Then we also have low molecular weight natural products, and they also contain sometimes the metal ion at their center. A very good example of this is chlorophyll, which contains magnesium ion at the center of porphyrin rings. So it serves the function of fixation of food, a fixation of light. It converts the radiant energy, the photochemical energy, into the chemical energy. So historically, if we see the inorganic elements, they were established quite early as the essential elements of the living system. And the examples, so many examples are available, like the extraction of potassium carbonate, that is K2CO3, and it is called potash. It was extracted from the plants, and also the iron containing complexes like potassium ferrocyanide and potassium ferricyanide, they have been extracted from the animal blood. So it was done in the 18th century itself. Then discoveries of the elemental phosphorus by dry distillation of urine residue in 1669, and of the elemental iodine from the ashes of marine algae in the 1811. This is also a proof how the inorganic elements that they were involved in the biological system. Then in the middle of 19th century, Liebig studied the metabolism of inorganic nutrient, and especially his focus was on the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium salts. And he saw that significant improvement in the agriculture is seen if these particular elements they are added in the soil. So this particular field of science gained enormous practical importance. However, the theoretical background and the analytical methods of that time, they were not sufficient to obtain detailed information on the mechanism of the action of essential elements. Because generally, if you see their particular analysis, if you see the analysis of a plant biomass, all these elements they are actually present in very little trace amounts. So at that time, because not so many sophisticated techniques were available, so this becomes a mystery. But yes, the work was started in the 18th century itself, and people were gradually understanding the role of inorganic elements in the biological system. Then inorganic elements like iron containing hemoglobin and magnesium containing chlorophyll, they are what? They are the pigments of the life. You cannot imagine life without hemoglobin and life without chlorophyll, because chlorophyll is what? It is the basis of the fixation of photochemical energy, from where the ecosystem, in the ecosystem, the energy flow starts from that pigment only. The plant which are the producers, they are the point of that energy fixation, and afterwards when the energy generates throughout the food chain and food web, it flows through the food chain and food web, so that starts, that is the starting point of the life. Similarly, the hemoglobin, which is known to carry oxygen in our blood, this is also a pigment of life. Life is not possible without them. So when they were analyzed, and then they are characterized later with a special subfield of organic chemistry. So earlier they were included in the chemistry of the natural products. So all the complex organic structures which are found in the biological system, they were included in the natural products. But after the 1960, that a significant discovery of Wohler, bioinorganic chemistry became an independent and highly interdisciplinary research area. Then some of the factors, they really played a crucial role in the development of bioinorganic chemistry. So some of the examples, like we can take the biochemical isolation and purification procedures. For example, the chromatography, which made it possible to separate the different components of complex biological mixtures. Physical methods of the trace element analysis, and with the help of them we came to know about the trace nutrients present in the biomass. Then some of the trace elemental analysis method, they are like atomic absorption or emission spectroscopy. Then all these advanced techniques, they have made it possible to detect and also characterize the trace elements in the biological materials. So in an adult human being, for example, it contains about 2 gram of zinc in the ionic form, that is a zinc dipositive ion. Although zinc cannot be regarded as a true trace element, the unambiguous proof of its existence in the enzyme, it was established only in the 1930s. So, a genuine bioessential element such as nickel, selenium, they have been known to be present as a constitutive components in the several important enzymes, and the studies were only became significant after 1970. So, in a very different research area, the biological reduction of carbon dioxide by hydrogen to produce methane, this has been investigated by studying the relevant archaebacteria, which are generally found in the sewage plant. So even though the experiment were carried out under the strictly anaerobic condition and all the conventional trace elements were supplied, the results were only partially reproducible. So eventually it was discovered that during the sampling with a syringe containing an inert stainless steel iron nickel tip, minute quantity of nickel had dissolved, and this accidental generation of nickel dipositive ions, they led to a distinctive increase in the methane production. So in fact, several nickel containing proteins and coenzymes, they have since been isolated. So by this experiment, the discovery of nickel as an essential element in the production of methane by archaebacteria, it was done. Then in the figure, you can see nickel containing urease enzyme, which was the first enzyme to be crystallized. And in the figure A, it is the crystal structure of full assembly of Helicobacter pyrrole urease. That is a particular enzyme in that bacteria, and this is the crystal structure of that enzyme. And in the figure B, you can see the active site with two nickel centers. So we have two nickel atoms here, which are shown in the green color, and these are two nickel centers, two green spheres. We have histidine, aspartate, histidine in the red color. Then we have aspartate in the gray color, and a carbamylated lysine. So that carbamylated lysine in the blue color is shown. So these are the ligands. So initially, if you look at the enzymes, if you look at the metalloenzymes, you can understand their behavior from the concept of coordination chemistry. These metalloenzymes are what they contain a metal ion at the center, and these proteins or the amino acid, these structures, they are basically serving as a ligand, and that is how the bonding takes place between the metal and the protein or amino acid structure. So for these discoveries, Richard Will Slater, he actually received Nobel Prize in the year 1915, and he said that enzymes are not only the proteins. Earlier, we think that enzymes are only proteins, but later on, after this discovery, it was found that they also contain metal ions at their center. Then, what do we consider as the scope of bioinorganic chemistry? So, there are so many contradictions. If you see, bioinorganic chemistry is actually includes the biochemical function of inorganic elements. Whereas in the organic chemistry, we are only restricting ourselves to the carbon compounds and especially hydrocarbons and their derivatives. In the biochemistry, we are only including the chemical components of the living system. And in the inorganic chemistry, we are considering only the non-covalent carbon components. So, therefore, you can see how the bioinorganic chemistry becomes a distinct discipline, and it includes only the metal ion and their biochemical functions. So we have three main fields of research in the bioinorganic chemistry. First is enzymes and biological relevant complexes. So for their study, they cover the biochemistry and coordination chemistry fields. Then the second is the biomineralization, and for that we cover biochemistry and solid state material chemistry. And the third one is synthesis of biomimicking model systems. So these three are very important fields of research in the bioinorganic chemistry. Now, let us see how we can define the bioinorganic chemistry. So, it is all about the metal and protein, and it is the gateway of inorganic chemistry and biochemistry. So, basically, it describes the symbiotic relationship between these two disciplines. So, they are adding to each other, they are benefiting each other, and the main focus is upon the function of inorganic substances in the living system. So when these metal ions, they enter in the living system, when these inorganic elements, they are present in the living system, how they affect the functioning of the system, like the very some very special functions performed by the biological system, like the transport of ions, like speciation, and eventually the mineralization of the inorganic material, and their use in the medicinal therapy and diagnosis. So we have two main fields which come under the bioinorganic chemistry. That is, first is the investigation of inorganic elements in the processes, for example, nutrition, the toxicity of inorganic species, including the ways in which such toxicities are overcome both by the natural system and by the human intervention, and of metal ion transport and storage in the biology. And the second main field is the introduction of the metal or metal complexes into the biological system as probes and drugs. So the developments in these two fields, they are proved to be revolutionary in the field of medicine. Now let us discuss the classification of different biological elements. So for understanding the classification, first of all, we have to see the elemental composition of biological system. So when the chemical analysis was performed for the biological system samples, practically all the elements of the periodic table, or you can say a minimum of 50 to 70 elements, they can be detected in the real biological samples so far by the analytical instruments. So Also, the physiological response was seen by different elements in the by varying their concentration in the food. So, on the basis of these responses, you can basically classify the elements in the biological system into two categories. So, in the biological system, when you have elements, they can be essential elements, and these essential elements are what they occur in a given concentration range. They exert a positive biological effect for several different species. Basically, the essential elements they are required for the proper functioning of biological system. Otherwise, we can have some impurity elements. So these impurity elements are actually they can be present due to some impurity, introduction of impurity, or due to pollution, contamination. Their quantity is a function of environmental effect. That they are not the true part of the biological system. Now, some of these elements they can be the indifferent elements and they have no effect as such on the biological system. They can be the beneficial elements which are proved to enhance the properties of other essential elements, and we can also have toxic elements. So toxic elements they have actually a negative impact on the biological system. So you can see the behavior, the physiological response of all these type of elements. So when the concentration of the element is increased in the food, so it actually increases the physiological response. So these elements are what they are considered to be essential elements. However, the essential elements they are also not required in a very high concentration, right? So only a certain minimum concentration is required even for the essential elements. Then we have normal elements which can be beneficial or not. We can have an indifferent element, and even in the case of indifferent element which do not cause any effect on the biological system, their excess concentration is also caused to decrease in the physiological response. Then the most important are the toxic elements, which actually show a quick decrease in the physiological response at higher concentration. Even a very when you increase their concentration a little bit, in that case also the physiological response quickly decreases. So if you see the essential elements, they are basically the conditions for the livelihood they are required for the normal functioning of biological system, and they actually show the positive physiological response that can be ascribed to their presence in the case of several species. They occur in the well-defined concentration range in the each species. So that concentration range is actually fixed for a particular species, like the amount of iodine in the marine algae. It is at that level fixed in for a particular species, and that cannot match amount of iodine in the human body. So for a particular species, the value of the essential element can be different, and they are actually deprival in nature because we are obtaining them from the food, and they will result in the reproducible and negative physiological change. So if you are not getting enough concentration of iodine, so that will be having negative impact on your metabolism. If you are not getting proper calcium, so in that case your metabolism will be affected somehow. So their deprival, their deficiency causes a negative impact, and these effects are what they are reversible, because once you add them in the sufficient quantity, once the element is given to the organism, so their deficiency can be removed. So these effects are deprival effects are what they are reproducible in nature. Once you start taking the iodine rich salt, all those deficiency system of thyroid they disappear. Now there are deficiency in excess, it is connected with the well defined diseases. So uh, uh, their concentration should be at an optimum level. This should not be less than that, and the concentration should not be more than that. This has to be maintained in a particular range. If there is a deficiency, it is a disease. If there is an excess of the element, then it is also a disease. So the biological presence of the element, it is connected with the well-defined biochemical processes, because they are performing a certain function. Like if I talk about the hemoglobin, it is required for the transport of oxygen in the human body. So in that case, a deficiency of iron can cause a deficiency in the hemoglobin, and we call this disease as anemia. So the iron concentration less than that, it is a disease, and iron concentration more than that, it can be toxic to the biological system. So you can see that the essential element dosage here, and this is the response of the biological system. So you can see the maximum response is when your concentration is optimal. At the optimal concentration, optimal elemental dose of essential element, you get the maximum response. Otherwise, below the optimal dose, there could be the survival issues or simple deficiency symptoms. And after, if you increase the elemental dose, after optimal dose, if you increase it further, you can see that the effect of the toxicity, symptoms of toxicity, and even at the higher doses, they can prove to be lethal. That is responsible for the death of the organism. So, essentiality of an element is defined by its physiological deficiency, which appears when the element is removed from the diet. So, in that case, you say that yes, this is the essential element, and deficiency is relieved by the addition of that element to the diet. So, once you remove the calcium from the diet, you see the deficiency symptoms, and then again you start adding calcium to your diet, and you can be relieved by those systems. So that is how you can say that yes, calcium is an essential element for the human body, or this can be done for any of the biological system actually. Then the specific biological function is associated with the element. So these three conditions, if they are met for a particular element, then we say that it is what? It is an essential element. Now, we can have some consequences related to the essential element dosage. So, at the lowest dosage, we have just seen that graph. At the lowest dosage, organism does not survive. In the deficiency region, the organism exists, yes, but less than optimal function. There could be some deficiency symptoms, some malfunctions in the metabolism. Then, after the optimal dose, that is beyond the plateau region, higher dosage cause toxic effect in the organism, eventually leading to lethality. So this can even cause the death of the organism if you go beyond that dose. So even the essential element which are very much required for our survival, they are not required in a very high amount. You just need an optimum concentration of them. So here are the classification seen for the biological element, and the metals which are seen in the red color, they are the essential element for humans, and they are their daily requirement is 25 milligrams. So this is the dietary requirement. Like you can see the hydrogen, sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, then chromium, molybdenum, manganese, iron, cobalt, copper, zinc, then carbon, silicon, nitrogen, phosphorus. These elements in the red color, they are essential elements, and now some of the blue colored elements, they are what? They are presumably essential elements. You can presume them to be essential. So what is the difference between the essential and trace element? So now essential elements, we have classified them into two categories. First is the essential element, second is the trace element. So if you talk about the essential element, they are required for the maintenance of life, and their absence, it can result in death or malfunctioning. So we have 30 such elements which are essential for life processes both in plant and animals. So how many essential elements we have? There are a total 30 elements which are known for maintaining the life processes. They are very much required, and this is the true for both the plant and animal systems. Then, apart from the essential elements, some trace elements are also there. So they are also essential elements, but their requirement is not that big. Like they are only required in a very small amount, in the micrograms, in milligrams. They are required in very small amount. And we have about 90 of the 30 elements, they are the trace elements. And among those 90 elements, 19 trace elements, 12 are the transition metals. Generally, these transition metals, they are known to form the metalloenzymes. They are forming a component, metal component of the enzymes, and 12 of them are the transition elements. So the following makes some elements essential. What makes some element essential? First thing is the element must have some unique chemical property that an organism can use to its advantage, and without which it cannot survive. There are survival issues if you do not get the essential element. Then second thing is adequate amount of element must be available in the environment in an easily accessible form. Third is most living matter. They consist primarily of the bulk elements. So, what are the bulk elements like oxygen, carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, sulfur? They are the bulk elements, and they are basically they are the building blocks of the compound that make up our organ, muscles, our body, and they also constitute the bulk of our diet. So, these are the bulk elements. They are required in bulk. So, generally, their intake is not an issue here because we are regularly taking them with the food, but uh, the trace elements, their intake is an issue because sometimes they are present in the diet, in some kind of diet they are totally absent. So how you will make them available to your body? So you have to adjust your diet according to that. Then six elements like the sodium, magnesium, potassium, calcium, chlorine, and phosphorus, they are called the macro minerals, and they provide essential ions in the body fluid and form the major structural component of the body. So, apart from the bulk element and the six macro minerals, all the remaining essential elements, they are called the trace elements. So, they are present in very small quantities in our body. So, if you carefully look at the trace elements which are required for the proper functioning of biological system, they are really difficult to detect, and that is due to their very low level. So they were very relatively slow to be recognized, and that is why it takes so many years to detect them in the biological sample. Many compounds of the trace elements, they are toxic in nature also. And how can the element present in small amount have such a large effect on the health of organism? This could be a question in your mind. So trace elements, they participate in the amplification mechanism. Amplification mechanism is what? They are actually the essential component of larger biological molecule that are capable of interacting with or regulating the levels of relatively large amount of other molecules. That is how they actually play an important role in the biological system, and they participate in the amplification mechanism. So that amplification is what? They are actually amplifying the role of other biological molecules, and that is how they become important for the biological system. Now see the classification of biological elements. So we have bulk element that are the building blocks of the body or organic skeleton components. So we have six such elements: carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, sulfur, phosphorus. Then we have macro minerals. So they are involved in the inorganic skeleton, and they are the body fluid components remaining in the ionic form. So we have sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium, chlorine. These are the 12 elements which are, you can say, the required in the bulk quantity. So they are the essential elements. Now, apart from them, we have a trace element. So among the trace elements, we can have main group element, and here we have selenium, silicon, uh, then tin, fluorine, iodine. They are the main group element required in the trace quantity. Then we have no, transition metals as trace elements. So iron, zinc, copper, manganese, cobalt, nickel, vanadium, chromium, molybdenum. They are the transition metals required in the trace quantity. Now, apart from them, we can have some non-essential or impurity elements, and they can be boron, titanium, tungsten, arsenic, cadmium, lead. So they can be beneficial or they can be indifferent. But some of the metals, they are really toxic in nature, and their presence in the biological system actually inhibits so many important biological functions. So, among this category, in the category of toxic element, we have mercury, cadmium, lead, thallium, arsenic, platinum metals, beryllium, barium. These are the toxic biological elements. So this is the elemental mass abundance in a 70 kg human. So you can see that bulk element, they are present in major quantity. 44 kg of oxygen is there. And if you see the macro minerals, so these macro minerals, they are also present in the big quantity, in a huge quantity. But the trace element, if you can see, like if you can see the vanadium in the human body, even less than the 2 milligram concentration, it is there. So, among these elements, iron was the first essential transition metal which was discovered in the biological system, and zinc was discovered in 1896. Then the remaining elements, they could be discovered only after the discovery of trace analysis techniques. So, in this classification, you can see that all the things, they can be poisonous. Even the essential elements, they can prove to be poisonous. So this is all about the dosage of the element, right? So for the if you see at the concentration of iron in the sea water, it is around this much of concentration, and the human plasma, you have a very high concentration. If you see the copper, so in the sea water it is very little, 1 into 10 raised to power minus 8 mole, and in the human plasma again the concentration is really high. If you see the cobalt, and in the sea water it is quite low, and in the human plasma it is even lower than that. So it is actually the dosage, individual health, and the way of administration which decides the role of an element. It can prove to be essential, it can prove to be toxic. So this is the periodic table of bioelements. The elements building up the biomass, they are shown in the green color. So they are basically the building blocks. Then we have additional essential elements shown in the purple color, essential for some group of organisms. So they are shown in the blue color. They are not required for all the organisms. Rather, for particular few organisms, for some microorganisms, some of their enzyme contain these metals. So they are essential for some group of organisms. And then in the brown color, you can see the medicinally important elements. So they have their medical applications in the biological system. So now I have a quiz for you from today's lecture. The first question is, what is the function of an enzyme? Second question is, what is a coenzyme and what are vitamins? Third question is, you have to describe the function of hemoglobin and myoglobin. Fourth question is, do you know any name of zinc containing enzyme? And fifth question is there any metal organic compound in vivo? So these are the references for today's lecture, and we will continue this discussion in the coming few lectures also. So that is all from my side for today. Thank you so much.